The Boy with Glass Bones and the Phoenix of Ice. There once was a boy named Theo, who was born with bones made of glass. Not real glass, of course, but bones so fragile and delicate that they might as well have been. His mother had known from the moment he was born, when the midwife handed him to her wrapped in the softest cloth anyone had ever seen, that her son would live a different kind of life than other children. Theo grew up in a small cottage at the edge of a village called Millbrook. The cottage had thick rugs on every floor and pillows lining every corner. His parents had made sure that everything in their home was soft and safe. The chairs were padded with extra cushions. The doorways had cloth hanging over them. Even the walls were covered with layers of fabric to protect Theo if he ever stumbled. For the first few years of his life, Theo's mother carried him everywhere. She held him like he was made of the most precious material in the world, which in a way he was. His father built him a special wheeled chair with soft padding that Theo could sit in and push himself around the house. They were loving parents who wanted nothing more than to keep their son safe. But Theo was not content with staying inside forever. As he grew older, he watched through his window as other children ran through the village square. He watched them climb trees and jump over streams and roll down the grassy hills beyond the village. He watched them fall down and get back up, laughing and brushing dirt from their knees, and Theo wanted more than anything to join them. His parents worried constantly. His mother would wake in the night and check to make sure he was still breathing. His father would test every surface in the house to make sure nothing had become too hard or too sharp. They loved him so much that their love had become a soft prison around him. On Theo's 10th birthday, his parents gave him a gift. It was a small glass bird that sat on a wooden stand. The bird was beautiful, with wings spread wide as if it were about to take flight. It was made of clear glass that caught the light and threw rainbows across the walls. "We thought you might like it," his mother said softly, "because it's delicate and beautiful, just like you." Theo looked at the glass bird for a long time. He reached out and touched it gently with one finger. The glass was cool and smooth, and suddenly Theo felt a wave of sadness wash over him. He did not want to be like the glass bird sitting on a stand, beautiful but unable to fly. He wanted to move through the world. He wanted to go on adventures. He wanted to live. That night, Theo made a decision. He would leave his cottage and go out into the world, even if it was dangerous. He could not spend his whole life wrapped in soft things, protected from everything, never really living at all. He waited until his parents were asleep. Then, moving very carefully, he got out of his bed. He put on his softest clothes and his padded shoes. He took a blanket and wrapped it around himself like a cloak. And then, for the first time in his life, Theo walked out the front door of his cottage alone. The night air was cool and fresh. Above him, stars filled the sky like scattered diamonds. Theo took a deep breath and smiled. He had never felt so alive. He began to walk slowly away from the village toward the dark line of forest in the distance. He knew he had to be careful with every step. The ground was uneven, and there were roots and stones that could trip him, but Theo moved slowly and deliberately, testing each step before putting his full weight down. It took him a long time to reach the edge of the forest, but he made it without falling. The forest was dark and full of sounds. Owls hooted in the trees above. Small animals rustled in the undergrowth. Theo felt a moment of fear, but he pushed it away. He had not come this far to turn back now. He walked deeper into the forest, following what looked like a path between the trees. The moon gave him just enough light to see by. And as he walked, Theo began to notice that the temperature was dropping. The air grew colder and colder until he could see his breath misting in front of his face. Then he saw something that made him stop in his tracks. Up ahead there was a light, but it was not the warm yellow light of a fire or a lantern. This light was blue and white and cold-looking. It seemed to pulse gently, like a heartbeat. Theo walked toward the light, curiosity overcoming his caution. As he got closer, he saw that the light was coming from a clearing in the trees. And in the center of that clearing was the most extraordinary creature Theo had ever seen. It was a bird, but not like any bird that existed in the natural world. It was a phoenix with great sweeping wings and a long tail of feathers. But instead of being made of fire like phoenixes in stories, this one was made entirely of ice. Its body was crystalline and clear, glowing with that cold blue-white light. Frost covered the ground all around it, and icicles hung from the nearby branches. The ice phoenix turned its head and looked directly at Theo. Its eyes were like chips of frozen sapphire. For a long moment, neither of them moved. Then the phoenix spoke, and its voice was like wind chimes made of glass. "You are the boy with glass bones," the phoenix said. It was not a question. Theo was so surprised that the phoenix could talk that it took him a moment to respond. "Yes," he finally said. "My name is Theo. How did you know about my bones?" "I know many things," the phoenix said. "I know that you left your home tonight because you are tired of being kept safe. I know that you want to truly live, even if it means you might break. I know these things because I am the same." "The same?" Theo asked. "But you're made of ice. You're strong and beautiful." The phoenix made a sound that might have been a laugh, though it sounded more like tinkling ice. "I am made of ice, yes, but ice is not strong. Ice is brittle. Ice cracks and breaks just like glass. I am a phoenix, which means I am supposed to burn with eternal fire. But I was born wrong, born cold instead of hot. The other phoenixes cast me out because I'm not what I'm supposed to be." Theo walked closer to the phoenix. He could feel the cold radiating from it, but he did not mind. "I understand," he said quietly. "I know what it's like to be different from what everyone expects." The ice phoenix lowered its great head until it was level with Theo. "I have been searching for someone like you," it said, "someone who understands what it means to be fragile in a world that values strength. I have heard of a place called the Fractured Mountains. It is said that in those mountains there is a way for broken things to become whole, not by being fixed or changed, but by accepting what they are and finding strength in it." "The Fractured Mountains," Theo repeated. "Where are they?" "Far from here," the phoenix said. "Many days' journey to the north. The path is dangerous, especially for ones like us who break so easily. But I believe that if we go there together, we might find what we are looking for. Will you come with me?" Theo thought about his parents who would wake in the morning and find him gone. He knew they would be worried and frightened. But he also knew that he could not go back to living in a padded room, protected from everything, never taking risks or having adventures. He had to know if there was a way to be whole while still being himself. "Yes," Theo said, "I'll come with you." The ice phoenix spread its wings wide. "Then climb onto my back. We will travel faster if you ride." Theo hesitated. "Won't I be too heavy? Won't you break?" "Perhaps," the phoenix said, "but we must take the risk. That is what this journey is about." Carefully, Theo climbed onto the phoenix's back. Its body was cold beneath him, but not painfully so. The ice seemed to shift slightly to accommodate his weight, forming a comfortable seat. Theo wrapped his hands gently in the phoenix's crystalline feathers. The phoenix spread its wings and began to run. Its feet barely touched the ground, and then, with a great sweeping motion of its wings, the phoenix lifted into the air. They rose above the treetops, above the forest, up into the night sky. Theo had never experienced anything like it. The wind rushed past his face. The world spread out below him like a map. He could see his village in the distance, tiny and peaceful in the moonlight. He could see rivers winding through valleys and mountains rising in the far north, and he felt, for the first time in his life, truly free. They flew through the night, heading north toward the fractured mountains. The phoenix's wings beat steadily, each movement sending small showers of ice crystals into the air behind them. Theo held on carefully, aware of how fragile both he and his new friend were, but also exhilarated by the adventure. As the sun began to rise, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, the phoenix descended toward the ground. They landed in a meadow filled with tall grass and wildflowers. The phoenix folded its wings and lowered its body so Theo could climb down. "We must rest during the day," the phoenix said. "The sun's warmth weakens me. I am made of ice, and heat is my enemy. We will travel by night and rest by day." Theo nodded. He was tired too. The excitement of the journey had kept him awake, but now he felt exhaustion settling into his bones, his fragile bones that he had to be so careful with. They found a spot beneath a large oak tree where the shade was deep and cool. The phoenix settled down, and Theo lay down nearby, using his blanket as a pillow. Within minutes, both of them were asleep. When Theo woke, the sun was high in the sky. He sat up carefully, checking himself for any injuries. Everything seemed fine. He looked over at the ice phoenix and saw that it was still sleeping. The heat of the day had caused some of the ice on its outermost feathers to melt slightly, creating small puddles around it. Theo felt a surge of concern for his friend. He spent the afternoon exploring the meadow, staying close to the tree. He found a stream nearby and drank fresh water. He picked berries that grew on bushes and ate them for his lunch. And he thought about what the phoenix had said about the fractured mountains, about finding a way to become whole. What did it mean to become whole when you were born broken? Theo had spent his entire life thinking of himself as damaged, as something fragile that needed to be protected. But maybe being fragile was not the same as being broken. Maybe there was a kind of strength that came from being delicate, from being careful, from understanding your own limits. As the sun began to set and the air grew cooler, the ice phoenix woke up. The puddles around it froze again, and the melted parts of its feathers reformed into perfect crystal. It stretched its wings and shook itself, sending a spray of ice droplets through the air. "Did you rest well?" the phoenix asked Theo. "Yes," Theo said. "Did you?" "As well as I can in the daylight," the phoenix replied. "Come, We should continue our journey. The fractured mountains are still far away." Once again, Theo climbed onto the phoenix's back. Once again, they took flight into the darkening sky. And so began their pattern of travel. They would fly through the night, heading always north, and rest during the day in whatever sheltered spot they could find. Over the next several days, they passed over many different landscapes. They flew over farmland where crops grew in neat rows. They flew over dense forests where wolves howled at the moon. They flew over wide rivers that gleamed like silver ribbons in the starlight. And slowly the land began to change. The gentle rolling hills gave way to rougher terrain. The air grew colder. Snow began to appear on the ground below them, first in patches, then covering everything like a white blanket. And in the distance, Theo began to see mountains rising up, their peaks sharp and jagged against the sky. "The fractured mountains," the phoenix said. "We are close now." As they drew nearer, Theo could see why the mountains were called fractured. They looked as if they had been broken and then put back together wrong. Great cracks ran through the stone. Some peaks seemed to be balanced impossibly on narrow columns of rock. Other sections looked like they had been shattered and then frozen in the moment of breaking. The phoenix began to descend, looking for a place to land. The mountains were not welcoming. Sharp rocks jutted up everywhere. Deep crevasses split the ground. Everything was hard and dangerous, exactly the kind of place where both Theo and the phoenix could be destroyed. They landed on a relatively flat area near the base of the mountains. The ground was covered in snow, which at least was softer than bare rock. Theo climbed down from the phoenix's back and looked up at the mountains looming above them. "How do we find what we're looking for?" Theo asked. "These mountains are huge. We could search for months and never find anything." The phoenix was quiet for a moment, tilting its head as if listening to something Theo could not hear. "There is a path," it said finally. "I can feel it. The mountains are calling to us. They know we have come seeking wholeness." "Mountains can't call to anyone," Theo said, but even as he spoke, he felt something too. A pulling sensation, a feeling that he needed to go in a particular direction. It was like an invisible thread attached to his chest, tugging him forward. They began to walk, with Theo moving carefully over the snowy ground and the phoenix walking beside him. The phoenix did not fly here. Perhaps it felt that this part of the journey needed to be made on foot, step by careful step. The path, if it could be called that, led them up into the mountains. Sometimes they had to squeeze through narrow passages between broken rocks. Other times they had to climb over piles of rubble. The way was difficult and dangerous, and both Theo and the phoenix had to be incredibly careful not to break themselves on the sharp stones. At one point, they came to a chasm that split the path in two. The gap was too wide for Theo to jump, and too wide for the phoenix to step across. They stood at the edge, looking down into the darkness below. "I could fly across with you on my back," the phoenix suggested. "But what if you can't carry me?" Theo said. "What if we fall?" "Then we fall," the phoenix said simply. "We can turn back or we can take the risk. That is the choice we have." Theo looked at the gap, then at the phoenix, then back at the gap. He thought about his parents and their safe cottage. He thought about all the years he had spent being careful, being protected, never taking risks. And he realized that He had not come all this way just to turn back now. "Let's fly," he said. He climbed onto the phoenix's back and held on tightly. The phoenix backed up to get a running start, then raced toward the edge of the chasm. Its wings spread wide and began to beat. They left the ground, sailing out over the darkness below. For a moment, Theo felt them dropping. The phoenix's wings were struggling with his weight. They were falling, about to plummet into the depths. But then the phoenix beat its wings harder, straining with effort, and slowly they began to rise. They cleared the far edge of the chasm by inches and landed on solid ground on the other side. Both of them were breathing hard. The phoenix's ice body was cracked in several places from the strain, and Theo could feel a pain in his ribs that suggested he might have cracked something too. But they had made it. They had taken the risk, and they had survived. "We are breaking," the phoenix said quietly. "Both of us. With each step on this journey, we crack a little more." "But we keep going," Theo said. "Yes," the phoenix agreed. "We keep going." They continued up into the mountains. The path grew steeper and more treacherous. The cold grew more intense. Snow began to fall, at first lightly, then more heavily. The wind picked up, howling between the broken peaks. Theo's whole body ached. He was almost certain that he had cracked several bones. Each step sent jolts of pain through him, but he did not stop. The pulling sensation was stronger now, guiding him forward. They were close to something. He could feel it. The phoenix was struggling too. More cracks had appeared in its ice body. Pieces of it were breaking off, leaving gaps. But it walked beside Theo, step after painful step, both of them determined to reach their destination. Finally, after what felt like hours of climbing, they reached a plateau. It was a flat area high in the mountains, surrounded by jagged peaks. In the center of the plateau was a structure made entirely of crystal. It looked like a temple, but not one made by human hands. The crystal grew up from the ground itself, forming walls and pillars and arches. Light seemed to come from within it, pulsing gently. "The heart of the fractured mountains," the phoenix whispered. "This is what we were looking for." They walked toward the crystal temple. As they got closer, Theo could see that the crystal was not smooth and perfect. It was full of cracks and breaks, just like the mountains themselves. But somehow, the cracks made it more beautiful, not less. Light shone through the fractures, creating patterns of rainbow colors on the snow. They entered the temple through an arch. Inside, the walls soared high above them. Everything glowed with soft light. And in the very center of the temple was a pool, but it was not filled with water. It was filled with something that looked like liquid starlight, silver and glowing. As soon as Theo and the phoenix entered, a voice spoke. It did not come from any particular direction. It seemed to come from the temple itself, from the crystal and the light and the air. "Welcome," the voice said. "Welcome, fragile ones. Welcome, broken ones. You have come seeking wholeness." "Yes," Theo said. His voice shook slightly, from cold and pain and awe. "What is wholeness to you?" the voice asked. "What do you believe it means to be whole?" Theo thought about this. A week ago, he would have said that wholeness meant being fixed, being made normal, having bones that would not break. But now, after everything he had been through, he was not sure. "I don't know," he admitted. "I thought I did, but I don't." "Then you are wiser than most," the voice said. So many come here wanting to be made into something they are not. They want their breaks to be erased, their cracks to be smoothed over. But that is not wholeness. That is denial. The phoenix spoke up then. What is wholeness then? Come to the pool, the voice said. Both of you, look into it. Theo and the phoenix approached the pool of liquid starlight. They stood at its edge and looked down into it. At first, Theo saw only the glowing silver surface, but then images began to form in the light. He saw himself as a baby held carefully by his mother. He saw himself as a young child watching the other children play from his window. He saw himself leaving his home in the middle of the night. He saw himself meeting the phoenix. He saw every moment of their journey through the air and across the land and up into these mountains. And in each moment he saw the cracks. He saw them in himself, in his fragile bones. He saw them in the phoenix in its ice body. He saw them growing with each step of the journey. He saw how they had both been breaking bit by bit as they traveled. But he also saw something else. He saw how the cracks had let light in. He saw how the breaking had made them more, not less. He saw that the cracks were not damaged to be repaired. They were part of the pattern, part of the design. They were what made Theo himself and the phoenix itself. You are not broken, the voice said gently. You never were. You are fractured, yes. You are fragile, yes. But broken means something does not work, something cannot function. Both of you function perfectly. You simply function differently than others. Your cracks are not flaws. They are features. They are you. Tears ran down Theo's face. He had spent his whole life thinking of himself as damaged, as something that needed to be fixed. But he was not damaged. He was just different. And different was not the same as wrong. The path to wholeness is not repair, the voice continued. It is acceptance. It is looking at your cracks and your fragile places and saying, yes, this is me, and I am enough. It is understanding that strength comes in many forms. The strongest oak tree can be snapped by the wind, but the reed that bends survives the storm. You are reeds, not oaks, and there is strength in that. The phoenix bowed its head. More cracks were appearing in its ice body even as they stood there. But I am melting, it said. I am breaking apart. How can I be whole if I am falling to pieces? You are not falling to pieces, the voice said. You are transforming. Look. The phoenix looked down at itself. The cracks that had appeared in its ice body were glowing now. Light was shining through them, brighter and brighter. And Theo realized that the light was not cold like ice. It was warm. The phoenix was not just made of ice. It had fire inside it, fire that had been trapped, unable to get out. The breaking, the cracking, was letting the fire through. You are a phoenix, the voice said. Fire and ice together. You were never meant to be one or the other. You were always meant to be both. But you could not be both until you accepted your cracks, until you let yourself break enough for the fire to shine through. The phoenix spread its wings, and they were glorious. They were ice and fire together, crystal and flame, cold and hot, all at once. The phoenix was not broken. It was complete in a way it had never been before. And you, the voice said to Theo, you have glass bones. This will not change, but you do not need it to change. You have already proven that you can live a full life, even with bones that break easily. You flew on the back of a phoenix. You crossed a chasm. You climbed mountains. You did all of this with your glass bones. Your bones did not stop you. Only your fear stopped you, and you overcame that fear. Theo looked at his own reflection in the pool of starlight. He expected to see himself broken and damaged from the journey, but instead he saw himself whole. Yes, there were cracks. Yes, some of his bones had fractured during the climb, but he was standing. He was alive. He was here, and that was what mattered. Wholeness is not about being unbroken, the voice said. It is about being complete as you are, cracks and all. It is about accepting your fragility and finding the courage to live anyway. You are whole when you say, "This is what I am, and I will not hide from life because I might break. I will live fully, carefully when I must be careful, boldly when I can be bold, always knowing that my cracks are part of me, not separate from me." The temple seemed to glow brighter. The pool of starlight rippled, and droplets of the silver liquid rose into the air. They drifted toward Theo and the phoenix like small stars. When they touched Theo's skin, they were warm and soothing. Where his bones had cracked, the pain eased, not because the cracks were healed, but because they were accepted. They were part of him now in a way they had not been before. The same thing happened to the phoenix. The droplets of starlight touched its body of ice and fire, and the cracks stopped spreading. They did not close up. They remained, but they were no longer a source of fear. They were beautiful, letting the light shine through. "You have found what you came for," the voice said. "Now you must decide what to do with this knowledge. Will you go back to your old lives? Will you hide away because you are fragile? Or will you live?" Theo and the phoenix looked at each other. They did not need to speak to know what the other was thinking. "We will live," Theo said firmly. "Yes," the phoenix agreed. "We will live." The temple began to fade around them. The light grew softer. The pool of starlight slowly sank back into the ground, and Theo and the phoenix found themselves standing once more on the plateau under the open sky. The storm had passed, and stars shone overhead. They made their way back down the mountain. It was just as dangerous as the way up, but somehow it felt different. Theo was no longer afraid of every step. He was careful, yes. He paid attention to where he placed his feet, but he was not paralyzed by fear. He understood now that he might break, but that did not mean he should not try. The phoenix flew sometimes and walked sometimes, using both its ice and its fire as it needed them. It no longer tried to be one thing or the other. It simply was what it was, and that was enough. When they finally made it back down to the base of the mountains, the sun was rising. The phoenix looked at Theo. "What will you do now?" it asked. "I'm going home," Theo said. "I need to tell my parents that I'm all right. I need to help them understand that I can live a full life, even with glass bones. They were trying to protect me out of love, but I need them to love me enough to let me be myself, cracks and all." "That is good," the phoenix said, "and I will find others like us, others who feel broken or different or wrong. I will tell them about the fractured mountains. I will tell them that wholeness comes from acceptance, not repair." "Will I see you again?" Theo asked. The phoenix bent its head down and touched its beak gently to Theo's forehead. It was cool and warm at the same time, ice and fire together. "When you need me," it said, "I will always come when you need me. That is what friends do." Theo climbed onto the phoenix's back one last time. They flew south, retracing their journey until they reached the forest near Theo's village. The phoenix landed in the same clearing where they had first met. "Thank you," Theo said as he climbed down. "Thank you for showing me that I don't have to be fixed to be whole." "Thank you," the phoenix replied, "for showing me the same thing." The phoenix spread its wings of ice and fire and took off into the sky. Theo watched it go until it was just a small point of light in the distance, and then it was gone. Theo turned and walked out of the forest toward his village. The sun was fully up now, and people were starting their day. As he walked through the village square, people stopped and stared. They recognized him, the boy with glass bones who never left. His house. They stared at him walking by himself, without his parents, without his padded chair. "Theo!" someone called out. It was his mother. She was running toward him, his father close behind. She looked terrified and relieved at the same time. "Theo, where have you been?" she cried. "We've been so worried. You could have been hurt. You could have broken." "I did break," Theo said calmly. "Several of my bones cracked on my journey, but I'm all right." His mother looked horrified. His father looked like he might faint. But Theo held up his hand. "I need to tell you something," he said, "and I need you to listen. I love you both so much. You have always tried to keep me safe, and I know that comes from love. But you can't protect me from everything, and I don't want you to. I am fragile. I have glass bones. This is true, but that doesn't mean I can't live. I went on a journey. I flew on the back of a phoenix. I crossed chasms and climbed mountains. And yes, I broke a little. But I also found out who I really am. I found out that I'm whole, even with my cracks." His mother was crying now. "But Theo, you could be so badly hurt." "I could be," Theo agreed. "But I could also spend my whole life hiding in a padded room and never really live at all. I'd rather break from living than stay whole from hiding." His father put a hand on his mother's shoulder. He looked at Theo for a long moment, and then, slowly, he nodded. "You've grown," his father said quietly. "We tried to keep you small and safe, but you've grown anyway. You're right. We can't keep you locked away forever. It's hard for us. You're our son. We don't want to see you hurt." "I know," Theo said, "and I don't want to hurt you by worrying you, but I need you to trust me. I'll be careful. I know my limits, but I also know now that my limits are further than any of us thought. I can do things. I can have adventures. I just have to do them my way." His mother wiped her eyes. She reached out and touched Theo's face gently. "You look different," she said. "There's something. You seem stronger somehow." "I am stronger," Theo said, "not in my bones. They're just as fragile as they always were, but in here." He touched his chest over his heart. "I'm stronger here." Life did not become perfect after that. Theo's parents still worried, though they tried not to show it quite so much. Theo still had to be careful with his glass bones. He still broke them sometimes, and each time it was painful and required healing. But Theo lived. He really, truly lived. He went for walks through the village and beyond. He made friends with the other children who learned to play games that he could join safely. He helped his father in the garden, finding that he had a talent for growing things. He learned to read and write and spent hours with books, traveling to far-off places in his imagination. And sometimes, on clear nights, Theo would go out to the forest, clearing where he had first met the phoenix. He would stand there and look up at the stars, and sometimes, if he looked very carefully, he would see a small point of light moving across the sky, ice and fire together, and he would know that his friend was out there, helping others find their own path to wholeness. Years passed. Theo grew from a boy into a young man. His bones remained fragile, but he had learned to navigate the world with them. He broke sometimes, but he always healed. And each break taught him something new about his own limits and strengths. People in the village stopped thinking of him as the fragile boy who needed to be protected. They began to see him as Theo, just Theo, a person with his own quirks and characteristics, one of which happened to be glass bones. He became known as someone who was careful but not fearful, cautious but not timid. Children who felt different or strange came to him for advice, and he always told them the same thing. You don't need to be fixed. You just need to accept who you are and find your own way of being whole. On his 18th birthday, Theo stood in that same forest clearing and made a decision. He would travel again, not to find anything in particular this time, but simply to see the world. He wanted to meet people and have experiences and gather stories. He wanted to live fully as he had learned to do. The night before he left, there was a rush of cold and warm air, and the phoenix appeared in the clearing. It had grown larger over the years, and its wings now blazed with blue ice fire that was spectacular to see. "You're leaving," the phoenix said. "How did you know?" Theo asked. "I always know when you need me," the phoenix said, "and I thought you might like a traveling companion, at least for part of your journey." Theo smiled. "I would like that very much." And so they traveled together for a time, the young man with glass bones and the phoenix of ice and fire. They went to distant lands and saw amazing things. They met other people who were different in their own ways, and they shared the lesson of the fractured mountains with all who would listen. That wholeness comes not from being unbroken, but from accepting your breaks and living anyway. Eventually, Theo and the phoenix parted ways again, as friends sometimes must. But they always found each other when it mattered, and both of them carried with them the knowledge that they had gained in those harsh, beautiful mountains. That breaking is not the same as being broken. That cracks let the light in. That fragile things can be strong in their own way. That wholeness is not about being perfect, but about being complete as you are. Theo lived a long life. He never stopped being fragile. His bones remained glass-like until the end of his days. He broke them many times over the years, but he also danced and traveled and loved and laughed. He taught others not to fear their own fragilities. He showed by example that a life lived carefully, but fully, is worth more than a life spent hiding from all possible harm. And when he was very old, sitting in his own cottage, much like the one he had grown up in, but filled with souvenirs from his travels and memories of his adventures, Theo thought about that night so long ago when he had first left home. He thought about the ice phoenix and the fractured mountains and the crystal temple and the voice that had taught him the truth about wholeness. He looked at the glass bird his parents had given him on his 10th birthday, which he had kept all these years. It sat on its wooden stand, beautiful and delicate. But next to it now was a drawing he had made of the ice phoenix with its wings spread wide, ice and fire together, cracks and all. And Theo smiled because he understood now that both images were important. The glass bird reminded him of where he had started, and the phoenix reminded him of what he had become. Not unbroken, not perfect, not without cracks, but whole, complete, himself. And that was enough. That had always been enough. The end.